Hey, fight fans, welcome back to Carl Prusa MMA. We got a familiar face on the platform. He is the undefeated and now 6-0 Mr. Lucas Rosa, coming off of a huge win this weekend, taking down Aaron Hughes, first round north-south choke. Lucas, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. It's honestly, one of the best weekends of my life, and I'm just back to training already, so trying to keep it going and build on that momentum. So
You know, you got to go back up north, got to go near your hometown, fighting from a bunch of friends, family members. Your brother was in your corner. Got to prove the 6-0 overall. If you could describe the weekend, how would you describe it as?
I would just say, it was very like fulfilling in a way. I feel like I almost like impressed, not impressed myself, but like proved some things to myself, and I think I'd silenced a lot of doubters. I got a lot of messages after the fight too from like other promoters and stuff who were even like surprised at like the way I was able to handle them, because a lot of people did view Aaron Hughes as a big step up. My brother didn't tell me before the fight, but he's like, man, I talked to a lot of people I trust the most in New England, like Devin Powell, who runs like Nostos, and like obviously, Rico, who did an awesome job commentating, and like, some of the people he trusts most in New England, and they all like Kyle Boschniak even, and they all said, this kid's way better than his record. And I knew that from watching the film on him. And like, I think a lot of people, even, the, the trolls I see online were even saying like, oh, finally someone's going to have to shut down this hype train. And I feel like I fought some pretty game opponents in the past, like Jacob Kreitel, who's like a good bare knuckle fighter, and Matt Denning, who has 8 pro wins. But like this was really a big step up that I think everyone was like, all right, here he is. He's gonna get exposed. And I feel like in a lot of ways, some people were rooting for me to get exposed as like the fake New Englander, the fake undefeated fighter, and to come in and I feel like put on the performance I did. I really it meant a lot to me, and to be able to win in that manner. I was expecting a war. I always go in expecting a war, but like that one I really didn't. I think in a way I almost even surprised myself, and I kind of saw the consistency of my training having paid off.
You know, the finishing sequence was absolutely unbelievable. We were able to catch him with that north-south choke. Choke you don't see too often, too.
Yeah, yeah,
Walk
pretty
me
good.
through the closing moments of that.
Yeah, so I mean, it was pretty, so I'll just like walk you through from like I feel like the sequence that like even like started the whole thing was I think, I really wanted to hit him with these draw checks like that I work with Roger Crowell a lot, and I think I hit him with one that was pretty good because he's just I know he spams calf kicks. He's pretty good at that. So that's kind of where it started. And so then once he did that, I heard like, my brother has this call that we do, and so he said, I'm not gonna say what it is because we kind of use code, but yeah, so I ended up start doing my own calf kicks, and I threw a couple calf kicks, landed through one really hard low kick that the positioning of the kick is something I actually learned from living in Holland doing like Dutch kickboxing, and then also I actually was in Canada and learned from this guy Ron Fagan, karate guy. So I the positioning of the kick I think really messed up his like knee slash cranial nerve calf quite a bit, and I saw he started moving a little funny from it. And from there, I threw a really hard 1-1-2, like just kind of pumped the jab, got him against the cage, used the Matt Waggy takedown, and from there, once I got to the ground, you know, I'd been practicing a lot in north south position with my coach, Charles McCarthy. I do privates with him like every week, like 3 times a week, pretty much, and that's like one of my positions that I'm a specialty is like the north south position. I don't really get the north south choke that often, but we've been studying Marcelo Garcia a lot, and he's like, for me the best pound for pound jiu-jitsu guy like pretty much ever. And it was actually really special that I tagged him in something, and he responded after the fight and said that, man, that's north south submission looked great. Like that meant a lot to me to hear from a legend like that. And yeah, I was like, I learned it from him quite a bit, and I actually also was reminded from Matt Waggy that I learned it a little bit of that sequence from David Terrell as well when I was in California. And so those are two like absolute legends, and of course I'm getting trained by my own legend, Charles McCarthy. So all three of those guys I think played a real role in like the reason that was so fast. You saw Hughes's legs flailing in the air within like 3 or 4 seconds of that choke going in. I really used the ribs to kind of cut off that artery. So yeah, it was yeah, I mean, I learned from the best, I guess, is the way I'd put it, and I studied the best, and so that's really what that came down to.
You know, kind of crazy. Now you proved a 6-0, and 6-0 is one thing, but you started in May. I mean, you have not
Yeah,
even been at this a whole year. I mean, what are we at,
yeah.
like 9 or 10 months? I mean, did you expect it to go this fast?
I didn't expect it, but I think there was a moment where I remember like my fight in February had gotten canceled. That I was supposed to have my first pro debut was in supposed to be in February. It got canceled, and I remember I sprained my MCL. And I remember sitting there in March being like, man, like things just didn't feel like right after I had this amazing amateur career, and I feel like I'd hit this like plateau of like 6 months without a fight. And I just remember my coach saying like, "Yeah, I mean, you should really try to get to like 4-0 by the end of the year." And I was like, "By the end of the year? Like what is he talking about, you know?" But when as soon as he said that, I was kind of like, "Why not? Like I need to be able to figure this out." And so that's kind of I think they had did a really good job setting up my first fight, but like since then a lot of these fights I've sort of operated like through the promoters, and of course I get great help from my team, but like I've kind of acted as my own manager and reached out to these different promotions and like helped like get opponents and stuff. And so, uh, yeah, I mean that whole process is something that was new to me. And like I think because of how obsessive I am with training, I was like, man, well, you have to be just as obsessive with this other logistical aspect because you can be the best fighter in the world, but if you don't have fights booked, then nobody's gonna see it. So that's kind of like I focused myself a little bit to that too. So like every waking moment I had, I was like either like helping promote my sponsors. I was reaching out to promoters, trying to find shows. Like I probably reached out to like all different places. There was times I was talking to people thinking I was going to fight in Alaska. Then the next day I thought I was going to fight in Indiana and then Mississippi. So like every day I was trying to like set stuff up and of course it always works out when you get to fight back home, which is where I love. But yeah, I mean I don't know that I'd say every time I hit a goal, I would be like, well, man, you could get to, you're 3-0 now. You could probably get to 4-0 by the end of the year. And then once I hit 4-0, I'm like, man, like, there's still a couple months left in the year. And so that sort of thing. And, I mean, now that I'm at like 6-0, I think it's that point now where I'm like, all right, now I have to focus on like skill building, like that part. But I think six pro fights in 9 months is pretty historic. And one of the ways I was able to do it too is that when the fights are 2 minutes long or less, you don't take a lot of damage. Like I was really happy I didn't take much of anything in this fight, which was good. And so that helps you train more. It helps you be that guy who's back in the gym on Monday, which I was. I was back in the actually training at Nostos Saturday morning, 2 classes and great gym there. And then I trained at obviously American Combat Gym this morning back in Florida. So.
You kind of mentioned a little bit of the logistical stuff that you're focusing, and I've been watching the sport for such a long time, and I think now I'm really starting to see this is more than a sport. This is a business, and it's a business in so many different aspects. Fighting on the regional scene. Who are you going to fight? That's a business decision because that's helping you get to the next level. Who are
Yeah.
you doing interviews with? What are you posting? What are you wearing? What are the sponsorships? Who are you training? Who's in your corner? These are all business decisions. Are you really starting to see this as a business?
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, like, because people do ask me about the money thing sometimes, like, oh, and I try to have to try to move myself. Like, I try to think about myself, like, if I was like coaching someone in a video game, like, what would the move be to make this person like get to the next level? So I kind of in a way have to remove myself as the fighter because I know the fighter in me, I just think, like I want to go in there fearless and whatever, but so I do have to kind of detach myself because in a big way, I think some people are motivated by money, or what the money represents, and that's kind of never been my thing. Like I do this because of love, the love of it, and the virtues that I find meaningful. I feel like are all the things that MMA exemplifies for me, at least. Like that's what it brings out in me. So, um, yeah, but I understand that, there is a game within that game, so you need to be smart about it. You need to be, a little logistical about it. And it's like not always the part that like people understand behind the scenes, like people just don't understand how much goes into it, whether it's, the weight cutting, like, the social media stuff, the sponsors and like, helping make sure advertisers are happy and of course all the matchup stuff and it's just sort of a game within the game that you have to sort of luckily I'm pretty college educated and my twin brother who's actually here with me now is like a pretty smart kid so I like to use him as an example because I'm like see if I wasn't fighting, I could be a real intellectual, same with my fiance who's like getting her PhD in philosophy. So these are like, I try to surround myself with like smart people, but also, vicious people in my fighting and my coaches and everything. So it's like you kind of got to have that mix of like people around you too to sort of give you different perspectives as well. Because I do think like if I had only one mindset or one perspective on things, I think that's how a lot of people do things only one way. And I think the way that I've been able to get to 6 fights in 9 months is doing things a little bit differently than most people are used to. And sometimes it takes people off. Like I think I have a lot of haters because of the way that I've done things in a certain way. And like, I think some promotions sometimes get upset when you fight like in regional scenes so close to each other. But, I try to be, just um I try to do things fairly, and I think if you do good things happen. So that's I always try to do things in a very like respectful way that's respectful of everyone. So
I've heard from a bunch of different fighters. When they get in the cage, something clicks. They're a different person. I really see that from you. When you're not fighting, you, like you said, very witty, smart guy. We could talk about history. We could talk about education, joking around. But when you fight, when you walk out, you're a different person. I mean, you literally turn into a monster. When do you feel the transition? At what point of the night do you really feel yourself starting to, evolve and turn into that person?
I think it's like, so I mean my fight day looks a very like kind of strange. It's like not like a normal day at all. I just like I wake up and like, everyone's like, "Oh, how you feeling?" And I eat well, but like I kind of almost just like stay in like my room trying to sleep like almost like I'm in a cave. And then like once I get out, I think that's when I'm really like, all right, like I feel like the universe has conspired to make me like destined to be great that day, like that night. Like that's how I feel when I come out of my room, like ready to go to the fight. And so yeah, when I'm there, I was flip that switch. I'm like, man, like I feel like I'm representing my family. I feel like I'm representing, my team. I feel like I'm representing like the lineage of Rosas and Lucases because I carry both the names of my mom's maiden name was Mary Lucas. My dad's name is Charles Rosa, so I feel like in my whole main name, like my name is literally carrying these lineages like down through history, and so I feel that like I feel like everything, like all these this just history like on my shoulders, and it doesn't feel like pressure at that point. It feels like this magic, this like power, this energy that's like Im- imbued within me at that point. And so, yeah, I mean, fight day, like that's where I'm really at. I'd say like there's a moment. I'd say 10 days before the fight, and this is just like an honesty fighter thing. Like there's a moment I'd say 10 days out every time where I think to myself like, man, like you might lose this fight. You probably are gonna lose this fight. Like, how are you gonna emotionally deal with that? Like, how are you gonna come back from that? um there's always those moments, and then like I'd say up to like two or then by the time it's like 2 or 3 days out from the fight, I feel like I could beat anybody in the planet. Like so it's always that transition. You go from like nervous to ready. And that just takes time, and it takes fights and everything, and I think it's because it means so much to me. Is why I feel that. But yeah, when I get in the cage, it's like, I feel it's a real catharsis of like all the struggles, all the sacrifices I've made, because I don't get to see, my loved ones as much as I'd like. I don't get to like socialize like a normal person. I'm obsessive. Like people think I'm crazy sometimes, even like, I mean, even the way I even trained for this fight camp, and it's something that like I didn't really talk about a lot. Of course, I wasn't going to, but I got a really bad flu like a week out from the fight, like bad. Like it was so bad I couldn't even talk. Like 2 days straight, I could not say a word. I would swallow. I stayed up for 2 days straight because every time I swallow, it felt like I was swallowing glass. So luckily it wasn't strep, but it was like a virus, and so I just had to tough it out. I couldn't take any antibiotics for it because antibiotics don't help viruses. So it's like those sorts of things. Like in those moments, I remember I was like 5 days out from the fight with this sickness, and I'm like, man, like you're gonna have to tough this out. Like, hopefully, it doesn't affect your conditioning. So at those points, you're kind of like doubting yourself. But in my mind, I just knew I'm like, when the time comes, I'm gonna be ready. And I think the mind is more powerful than like anything. So yeah.
Now, obviously, your brother's been a very big name for himself in the sport, obviously doing great things in the UFC, now going to the GFL, hopefully doing
Yep.
some great things there as well. Do you feel pressure out that in a way? Obviously, he's made it. He's done some great things. Do you feel like you kind of have to get there and do what he did?
It's more like, to me, it's just more like I have a blueprint for everything. Like we're the same body type in a way. Like people confuse me. I have my own identical twin who's like here with me right now visiting, and despite that, I still get confused. My older brother is 10 years older than me, so it's like we must have strong genetics, but we're literally very similar types of body type. The styles of things we like to do. Like I'm a little more grappling, or not grappling, but wrestling oriented than he was at this point. But yeah, we have like very similar styles and mindsets, and to have that blueprint of like seeing just like I said, not just what he did in terms of the techniques, but also what he did in terms of like the game outside the game, and to be able to like learn from that and build on that and have that guy to bounce those ideas off of. It really is like a big help. And for me, he's been more of an inspiration than anything. Like people always ask, like they're I've been compared to my twin brother my whole life, so like those comparison things mean nothing to me. Like I enjoy being compared to siblings and stuff, like especially when they're you know good role models and stuff and good people to aspire to. So yeah, my brother, it's not really like like some people be like, oh, well, do you feel like you're in a shadow? It's like, it's not really like that at all for me. Like, I'm such a different person than Charles in terms of like the academic and the philosophical aspect. But, to me, he's just shown me more what's possible when you work hard and you build off that. And so for me, it's been cool too. To me, I look at it and I'm like, man, he's 10 years older than me and he's fighting at the highest level still. Like, so I'm like, I have another 10 years in this sport. Like, I've only been fighting for like 3 years and it's been such a surreal experience. And, where I've gotten to obviously in the past, like I said, 9 months, to think that, it's going to be, 9 months to 10 years, it's to think this is going to happen another 10 years is just, it really, it's fun to think about in a way and very meaningful and to see what he's done and win his title fights in CES both in the first round. He won a really big bare knuckle fight obviously, and then now he's in the GFL, which I feel like could revolutionize the sport. So it's really cool to see. And I have thankfully I have a lot of those type of role models like Matt Waggy and Charles McCarthy, and obviously even Rico who commentated the fight. Like I have people to look up to who are making splashes on their own scenes, and so it's nice to be surrounded by greatness.
Speaking of the Devil, Rico DeShulo coming off of a big BKFC
Yeah, yeah,
debut. Kind of funny. I didn't realize that he commentated until I started watching it, and I was like, "Is that really Rico?" And
yeah.
doing a wonderful job. Was that kind of pretty cool to be able to have a guy like that pretty much your whole life commentate your fight?
Yeah, I mean, he's an older brother to me, basically, and he, even my brother Charles, for the first time ever, wasn't able to attend a fight of mine because he had to go to something to do with his, my niece that's going to be born in about 2 months here. He had some things he had to take care of, like with that, and of course, he has his fatherly obligations and responsibilities, so he couldn't make the fight in Vermont last time, and so Rico actually stepped in my corner and he told me some of the best advice. He told me like how to feint, and literally told me, an old analogy because he used to play Mortal Kombat with my brothers a lot and get in trouble for it actually. But he told me, hey, you got to freeze him, act like you're Sub Zero from Mortal Kombat, and so I worked that in the fight, and it actually was one of the things that like worked the best in the first minute, and so it's cool, like, because he sort of just gets it, like we're on the same wavelength because we kind of grew up together. He kind of is basically my older brother in a way, and it's like I said, he does a great job commentating too. I said this in one of the posts, he was so succinct with everything and like got so much information out in such an interesting way. Yeah, I mean, and then of course he just, I try to copy him in the gym too. Like, me and Charles have this call when we start saying Rico, we both know what it means. I'm not gonna say what the code means in here, but like, he has a really great way of like framing things and like looking, searching for power shots, and that's something that I think like I need to get better at. That's probably one of my weakest things, and he's such an expert at it. So to see him both as a competitor and now like a broadcaster, and then of course a role model is kind of like an older brother my whole life. It's really meaningful, really meaningful, and it's just so many full circle moments have come from fighting in the past 9 months. It's been insane.
So last time I talked to Rico, he was talking a lot of smack, saying that he's like one of the best golfers, that he's a good golfer, and he beats all the other guys in MMA. Do you have any proof of this? Can he actually golf?
I don't know much about golfing, but I've heard he's pretty good. Actually, he spends a lot of time on it at least, and he's got he's got that pride of Peabody shit talking down. So
It's crazy now. You're a 6-0 fighter. Every summer, there's a reality series called the Dana White Contender Series. You've probably heard
yeah,
of it a couple times.
yep.
You're telling me, your brother was actually telling me months and months and months ago that he thought you could go on there. And at the time, I was like, kids like 2-0, 3-0, whatever at the time.
Yeah.
It's a realistic possibility now. We're 6-0. If you get another fight before then or another two, you could be 7 or 8, 7-0, 8-0. We see guys every single season with that record.
Yeah.
Would we be lying if we weren't maybe thinking about this for the summer?
Yeah, no, I mean, my goal has always been to become, a UFC fighter, or just compete at the highest level of the sport. And for me right now, I think that's the UFC, and I think those are the UFC champions. And not just because of even brand recognition, but just because I really do think they have the best fighters on the planet right now. And obviously we're going to see how like GFL and stuff revolutionizes the sport, but I think right now it's still the UFC, and I'd love to have those sorts of opportunities. And I met Dana White before, and he kind of said, oh, rack up a couple more wins, maybe we'll see you on Contender. And so that stuck in my mind since I think I was like 1-0 at the time, and so I was able to rack through another 5 wins here and all in the first round. I think they've been in pretty impressive fashion, and especially this last one, which I think everyone was expecting to be like a war, or maybe for me to get exposed, and instead I, kind of I think put a stamp on it. And so yeah, I mean, I'd love to have those sorts of opportunities. I try to listen to my coaches and stuff as much as possible, and kind of try to let them make those kinds of decisions. I don't. I think the worst thing would be to rush something like that as well. Because you only get limited opportunities in the UFC, so you want to really feel like you're ready and the best fighter you could possibly be. If I feel like I need to take a couple extra months to skill build before, I feel like I'm at the level that I need to be. Because once I get to the UFC, I don't want to just be like, okay, well now I'm struggling to get to this like, win one fight, lose 2 fights to try to stay in the UFC sort of thing. Like when you get to the UFC, you want to feel like you could make a title run. And so I have to be like realistic with my coaches about whether we think we're at that point yet. So, you don't want to just be a UFC fighter. You want to feel like you could be in a top contender in the UFC by the time you get to that point. So, if I don't know, I think August would be fucking awesome to to take that sort of opportunity and run with it. But we'll see where my level is at that point.
While you're relatively young in the sport as a professional, I'm doing this for about 9 months now. You're also
Yeah.
28 years old. Some
Yeah.
guys start at this pro scene 2021. They have growing to do. You have grown. You've overcome obstacles. You've experienced triumphs, goods and bads in your life. Do you think that will help you?
Yeah, I mean, I think like one thing I'll say too is I think it's funny, like, my age with everything, like I think we just have really young genetics. And on top of that, like I'm someone who it's weird, like I've never done smoked anything. Like I've never done drugs, I've never had a sip of alcohol. I don't even have never even honestly drank a coffee or an energy drink. So I feel like a lot of those things keep me young, like, and I see that Charles on the level he's at, like, 10 years above me. And, I think we just have really young genetics. Like, I can't even grow a beard, honestly. So I think people mistake me for being like 22 all the time. And that's kind of how I feel in my body. So, I think people mature and prime at different ages. And I think we're just kind of late bloomers with that. But so that's like one thing with it. Like, I kind of wish my age reflected that because I kind of really do feel like I'm like 22. Um, but, but yeah, no, I think, I've been through a lot in my life, and I think having the wisdom, like there's something to be said, obviously, about having like knowledge, and being smart, but there's also to be something about like wisdom. And I honestly think if I had, started this when I was like 6 years old from trying to be an MMA fighter, like I don't think I would have the right perspective going into the sport that I do now. Like I think it's almost better the way it worked out, where I kind of had to start at like, I only started really, really MMA training on my Watson. But like after my Watson fellowship, I have only been training for about like 4 years, for real MMA. So I think the perspective I went in there with was so good though, and so like so based towards knowledge building that I think I'd never developed any, not any, but I never developed like the bad habits or sort of the bad mindsets that you might if you started when you were like 19 or started when you were like, since a young age and kind of just got bored with it. So I think everything happens for a reason, and I think that sort of timeline happened for a reason. So
How much fun are you having with this journey right now?
it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's also very hard. I like there's, a lot of sacrifices. Like the fight camps can be lonely. Um, but I think like the surrealness of it sometimes, like I just stop and think in moments. I'm like, man, like that kid just asked for my like autograph, or like, like I got a text the other day from a family, like, the whole grandkids, their whole group of grandkids went to the fight, and they bought Lucas Rosa shirts, and this one little girl, she has a pink Lucas Rosa shirt that she won't take off. They're trying to get her to take it off, and she won't take it off since the fight happened. And I'm just like, something like that. I'm just like, it's surreal to me, that I can be an inspiration to people, and that I'm at this level. And like I said, as much as I surprised myself going like, having 6 fights in 9 months, like even just the way that I was able to win this fight, like man, I like implemented the stuff that I studied about Marcelo Garcia from Chainsaw Charles McCarthy, and I pulled off this rare submission in 2 minutes against a tough New England guy who, trained at New England Cartel, which is a gym I really do respect and have trained at, and so, to be able to do that, like I'm just sometimes in awe of the journey of like, and it's true what they say. I think Eddie Alvarez has said it before, like, there's no secret ingredient. There's no secret to it. It's just hard work. It's just being consistent. Like, you do it enough, you're consistent enough, you approach it with the right mindset, and you just work hard. Like, and it's been amazing how far that's taken me so far. And, yeah, I'm just so thankful for it. And yeah, life is surreal sometimes with it. Like I can't believe the things I've been able to do. I've been able, honestly, like this is something I don't even want to really talk about on air too much, but I was able to get my fiance, I got her a horse for her 30th birthday, like with the sponsorship money, which probably ill advised. I do spend all my money on like directly into my fight camps, like everything, every penny. I don't even make money, honestly. All my money goes straight back into my fight camps. But the one special thing I was able to do was like something like that. And so to do those sorts of things, like it just there's things that I would never even have thought of a year ago. Like if you told me a year ago you're gonna be 6-0, have just come off that kind of win, like I don't know, I would be surprised in a way, but also be like, man, well, that's the consistent Lucas that I know, I guess, that I aspire to be. And so hopefully in a year's time, I'll be looking at myself back the same way and be like, man, I can't believe, what I was able to accomplish. And I know it only gets tougher from here. Like the fights get harder, the level gets, tougher, and the crowds get bigger. So the spotlight will be on me, but I'm ready for it. And when the time comes, I'll be ready.
Another thing I've really noticed is you're really starting to catch that following on social media. I'm like
Yeah.
50,000 Instagram followers already.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
crazy. Are you really starting to feel that hype and attention?
Yeah, I mean, so like I feel like I felt it most in this fight in a way, because I do feel like, I see trolls sometimes, and like to me I like shutting up doubters, like I have that chip on my shoulder. Like nothing to me is like one of my favorite experiences ever was going into Alabama, and it was my last amateur fight, and I fought their number one, it was the number one ranked guy in Alabama and Louisiana. And there was nothing better to me than just shutting up a whole crowd of Alabama fire, the whole Alabama fans. I remember walking in there and I was mean mugging them, saying all this stuff like, "This is my effing house." And the the ref came up to me and he said, "You swore 2 times already. You swear one more time, I'm gonna start deducting points from you," which I didn't even know was a thing, But like, I was like, "All right, I'm not gonna say anything else." But yeah, I mean, I thrive on those sorts of like doubters and that sort of thing. And so, I did feel the sort of pressure of that, because I feel like, again, there was sort of maybe that sentiment of like people wanted me to get exposed in a way, and the fact that it was such the opposite, meant a lot to me. And so yeah, I feel that hype, but it's to me, it's like it's all good. Um, and again, it's like Lucas Rosa Nation is my Instagram handle, and I feel like I'm representing Lucas Nation, the whole lineage of my mom's side, and Rosa Nation, the whole lineage of my dad's side, and so it's this whole nation that I'm forming of fans and people hopefully that I can actually inspire and do good with. And so yeah, it means a lot to be able to you know you know be getting the recognition, and not just the recognition for myself, but to be able to sort of hopefully make a difference. I feel like at the end of the day, a lot of this is about imbuing some sort of virtue for people that they can relate to. And if they see something in my fights that they feel like they can relate to, if they see something like, I always say, if you look through the cage link fence, you might see a piece of my soul, and if they can relate to that piece of my soul, then I feel like it's I'm proud to call them fans.
All right, last question, Lucas. So we're only a couple months into 25, got 10 months left. In a perfect world, how does this year play out for you, my friend?
um I mean, it's kind of a tough question. I try to take fights one at a time. Like I just try to be like so one track minded about it. They always ask me like, "What's your favorite, win? Like your favorite moment from everything?" And I just say, "My favorite win's the next one." And so that's how I kind of try to approach things. And like for a long time now, I've had 6-0 above my ceiling wall, and I'm gonna have to take that down tonight and put up 7-0, and that'll be my only thought for the next until I get to that point. I think I need to skill build a little bit more. I kind of want to develop a little. I've been developing some knockout power with some really good striking coaches. Roger Carl does a really good job with distance management and movement. He's like one of the best striking coaches you could ask for. Probably I'd say the best MMA striking coach in the world. I've been working with Waggy and my brother a lot on pads, and they have very high MMA IQ. I worked with like Billy Patton for boxing and that sort of thing. So I kind of been working to develop a little more power. But I think even at one point I might even go try to work with. It's again an awkward thing because he's a commentator, but I might go work with Rico a little bit to try to develop some of my power with him. He's a really high level striker, and so I have a lot of people that I can turn to sort of implement different parts of my game, but the goal I think always has to be like, I can never be comfortable with where my level is at. And I think that's why I've been able to advance so quickly is because, I don't stop learning. And like I feel like the moment you plateau is the moment you're dead. Like that's the moment like for me I'm like all I can think about, and the reason I feel like I have put some pressure on myself is because you need to have that preparation. You need to be growing every moment. And if you're not preparing well enough. And for me, the preparation is what takes away the fear. And that's why I'm able to go in the fights fearless, like looking like a monster, because if you don't have the preparation, you feel the weight of that. And so, um, yeah, yeah, I think I just the end of the year, I'd like to be fighting at the highest level possible, and that's really where I'm looking at. So,
Awesome. All right, Lucas, man, congratulations once again. I always appreciate every time that we talk. 6-0 now. The future is very, very bright for you, my friend. I hope we see you soon.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for the interview.
Absolutely. That's it for us tonight. I am Carlo Prusa. That is the monster. He is Mr. Lucas Rosa. I'm sure he'll be fighting sometime soon again to 7-0. Take it easy, Pipe.